Hey guys, it's October the 10th, which is a bank holiday. And yet the equity markets are open. That's always been like a fixed income versus equities folks kind of pain point, if you will. But, what I thought I would do today, because quite frankly, until some of these earnings come out, there's really not much that you should be thinking other than number one, am I hedged up okay? And number two, do I have enough cash in case things are really weird the way that this market plays out? So I thought what I'd do in this episode is really talk about China. So we'll go through kind of those basic things that we always talk about to set the stage for what we're looking at. But really, I think there's so much news that's happening Thursday and Friday, not the least of which is the start of earnings season, but also this news that we'll see on the 16th from China. And then it almost doesn't matter what any of these companies report. Let's take a look. I'm going to share my screen. Past performance, it's not indicative of future returns. And we're looking at the markets today and we're seeing, it started up 30 basis points, 40 basis points. And I was like, that's not going to last. I mean? And here we are. It's not funny. I guess I should try not to giggle when I see it, but it's like this, there's no bottom. It's just sinking straight to the ground. The S&P down 1%, NASDAQ down almost 2% after a really bloody Friday. And then Russell also, sinking downward. Now, I've seen some people with the Russell try to give this argument about how the Russell has a low PE. And I would really encourage those folks to really make sure that when they're looking at that work, that it's not a composite that is missing a couple of blanks here and there, which sometimes happens when people are rolling up numbers. So I'm not convinced that's the correct number is what I'm saying. Case in point, your largest asset within the Russell's AMC. So if that doesn't give you a hint that maybe there's something not quite right in your math, let's just start there and move our way to the left. Here's a Finviz. I'm a big fan of them. I'm always going to give them a shout out for this heat map that I then don't have to collect data for, which I really appreciate. And you can see a lot of big cap is coming straight down, but even energy for whatever reason is red. It just tells you that there's people that are posturing in front of earnings season, probably a little bit of profit taking off of what was happening last week. But in fairness, we know what this earnings is going to be. It's everybody else. It's kind of a little bit of a question mark. And then I just want to show you on the economic data, we do have CPI coming out. I mean, everybody's watching these inflation numbers. I get it. Retail sales will come out. Business inventories will come out towards the end of the month. And then we do have on the 12th, the FOMC minutes, which it always is so fascinating to me because we know what's in these minutes. It's not like it's some mystery thing, but seems to me like every single time the Fed coughs these days, the market wants to just hold its breath in front of it and then make a call sometime in the middle of it in the strangest possible way. So Wednesday's FOMC meeting, you probably need to just hold on tight in front of that. We've got Pepsi on Wednesday, and then we start in with the banks and Taiwan Semi on October the 13th. So it really, Fastenal is going to tell you industrials. Walgreens, look, Rite Aid wasn't a great quarter. So, I'm not looking for rocket science out of Walgreens, and the market really shouldn't either. It's really all about the financials and what they have to tell us, both on what they're seeing with the consumer and what they're seeing in financial health and stability. But also, I would be surprised if these guys were allowed to get away with not telling us what they're seeing internationally in a bit more detail than they typically do. All right. With that, in general, I'm really not feeling great about the banks going into earnings. So it will be a surprise to me. I may stand very corrected come Thursday, Friday, but I think it's really awkward because even if they do come out okay, I think they're going to reserve more capital, and that's going to look cosmetically a certain way on the numbers. Oh yeah, the one thing that's kind of interesting is Delta Airlines. Delta Airlines will report on Thursday, and thus far we've heard nothing but positiveness as relates to the travel sector. But we've had kind of I don't know if it's just me or if it feels differently, but this will have ended. The mark will be taken at the end of September, which gets you through holiday travel season and that initial kind of back to school, et cetera. And so I think it's really their guidance that we're going to be watching for. Now, we know oil prices have come down. The refiner that they own should still be making money, but the freight numbers that we got out of American Express, particularly international, in particular because Delta's strategy has been to be more towards the Atlantic, could be a little bit of a doozy. So I am curious, but if Delta comes out strong, boy, I'll tell you, the other two are going to be just fine as well. So that one we're going to watch for, and then realize that you could, if you've got positions in American or in United, Delta is going to help you out there one way or the other, one direction or the other. All right. This is probably the more important news that's coming up. October 16th is the opening of the 20th National CCP Congress in China. It happens every 5 years. And fun fact, there's about 3,000 people that attend. So it's this ridiculous official meeting that might seem like very boring, dry politics, but a lot of stuff happens at this meeting and a lot comes out. And so I'm going to kind of walk you through, because I've been getting a lot of questions on China. My general policy is to say nothing about nothing controversial, especially as relates to specifically China. I got too many friends on all sides of this issue that I'm trying not to offend, and I would like to still be invited to dinner and be allowed to enter this country. So please be careful on how you come at me on this, one way or the other. Look, why is it controversial? There are two things that make Xi Jinping controversial on the international scope. I don't know that he's necessarily controversial within China. I think that even if he was, if you're in the border of China, you're probably not speaking about it. But the first thing is that it is a third term, and that'll come up a lot. And people will be like, well, no one's had a third term since Mao. In fairness, Deng died at the end of his term. So like, that kind of is what it is. And that actually is a very intriguingly fun story for anyone that lived through the Deng period. And you should ask them, because it took a while to figure out the secession plan. And this is part of the reason why every time you're looking at an Asian news agency, especially South China Morning Post or some of the other Chinese ones, they'll be like, I don't want to know the secession plan. And just in case. The other thing that's really kind of made the second question more relevant is that he will hold the three highest titles. And it's not common for one person to hold all three titles. The Mao was really the person that did that more than anyone. President, chairman of the Communist Military Commission, and also general secretary of the CCP. So that makes it a little bit tough in that regard, let's call it. A couple other things that you kind of have to know about Xi Jinping. Oftentimes people will say that he's a little thin-skinned. Okay, I'm just quoting what other people say. He came in in 2013 under the mantra of anti-corruption, and in doing so, he garnered hold of, oh man, I'm blanking on the name of the organization. Basically, one that listens in on everything, for lack of a better way to describe it. And so that's kind of his deal. And he's really excelled at that task. Let's call it that way. Additionally, in 2013, he did announce the Belton Road. And I'm going to go through that because I think a lot of people might need a review on that, even though we have been talking about Belton Road periodically every single time we've had the show almost, I think, but definitely since February when these things came out. So I'll review Belton Road again, because I feel like some people wouldn't mind having this all contextually together. And then the other considerations that have to come out of this. So that's the background. Just realize that the platform that he's run on is this Belton Road platform, as well as the anti-corruption stuff. And also this idea of revitalizing the glory of China past. And that really is where Hong Kong and Taiwan come in a way that, we're going to try to fly right down the middle on, if you will. Okay. He's going to come into his third term with COVID lockdowns that are severely affecting the economic growth that he's been known for. And also, we obviously have this very tumultuous geopolitical environment, both in Taiwan, also in Europe. So why am I bothering to tell you this? How does this affect the markets? It's really this comment, and this is a comment that I've thrown out more than once. So it was really intriguing that the CEO of UBS also threw it out. And he talks about, in the context, they were just asking about how are you thinking about the back half of the year, et cetera. and UBS is a big global international Swiss bank. And so he was talking about, and then they were talking about Asia and what's going on there and the deleveraging that's happened ever since Evergrande. And he says, that particular event is affecting all of Asia Pacific from Australia all the way across. And then he says, so I do expect that on the back of a confirmation of political leadership in China, and with that, the confirmation of economic policies in China, because that's what this event is really all about. And with that, also further lifting of restrictions around COVID. Most people are thinking, like I am, that a lot of the restrictions are really surrounding just calming things down and solidifying things and not letting people go all over the place during this, let's call it confirmation period. That, the whole Asia area will basically get a bit of an uplift and will pick things up. And with that, I do expect also then the deleveraging to stop at a certain moment in time. Deleveraging in this regard, I believe the context he was talking about is the generalized flow of funds that's just reducing gross across the entire region, reducing gross exposure, meaning people aren't taking directional bets within Asia in quite the same way in any asset class. Okay, so this was from the UBS quarterly conference call. I believe it was the CEO that answered this particular question asked by investors. So I'm not the only one that's thinking the way that I'm thinking. Do I put odds at 100%? No, I do not. Okay, let me just say it like that. Anything can happen. It is geopolitics. It is not rocket science or something that has like a very definitive cause and effect. Now, I want to talk to you about the Belton Road, and maybe it's even smarter for me to actually give you these numbers first. Okay, this is something that is poorly understood and is part of the reason I keep saying or have said, whatever you may think geopolitically, it sure would be nice if China would help us out with this, let's call it geopolitical tumultuous environment. And let me show you some of the things that you have to understand about China, which we have talked about extensively. This is inflation, 2022. This comes from the Haver Analytics. This is the US Bureau of Labor Statistics. It's just a combination. China hasn't had a lot of inflation. And there's reasons for that we have discussed, which really are everything from coal production and the use of coal from nat gas that happened as early, like well before November. They were just like, screw it, we're going to just stockpile this coal and keep going. And then they bought in a whole lot of our oil when it was at 30. And we were getting the oil companies to cut it down and cut it back. Additionally, they have been stockpiling fertilizer. They don't export it anymore. And that's despite the fact that they are a pretty big nitrogen producer. And then there's a lot of other things here and there that really help that inflation number out. But the two biggest components that we're suffering through, they don't really have yet the bigger problem. Now, the fact is China's a net importer of food. So that kind of is what it is. But I do believe that they chose a whole series of ways to manage that for better or for worse. So that's something to realize. The import index as well, just realize relative to other nations, they're not even remotely as leveraged to the need for imports. That's where they sit on the chessboard. We sit in a different place. Every country has a certain way that they're set up on the chessboard. Okay, now let me go backwards on my slides here. The Belton Road, this actually was pre the Ukrainian conflict. I had shown this more than once. It looks to me like, so I know that this map predates March 2021. Nonetheless, the current map looks identical from Klingendale Institute of International Relationships. It's a Netherlands Institute of International Relations that posts this map. It looks identical from the update from 2021. Let me walk you through this map. Here's China in red. All the little dots are parts of logistics that they own that is not in their country, okay? So this big blue dot is the Shanghai area, Ningbo, whatever you call it, area of ports. So they own, or they either own a majority stake, own a minority stake, or have some other type of involvement that gives them some really special situation going on there, or alternatively, Hong Kong owns it. And that's the truth of it. And early in COVID 2021, interestingly enough, Europe was not experiencing inflation the way that the United States was in Latin America. And I had hypothesized that part of that was because of this thing right here. And I hypothesized that because when I went to Europe, all their goods had made in China stickers on them. So, you know, and I only went to 2 countries, so it's not really the best way to do your research, but nonetheless, you know, the only places that you saw that, that didn't have greater than what you call it percent inflation were really Europe broadly and China at that time in 2021 that we were looking at this map. Subsequently, that's changed. Okay. So, so why do we talk about this? This is really the context of me reviewing this is when I say that it would be nice to have China help us out. I really mean it. They are actually one of the few players on the chessboard, despite poor economic data, that could help us out. They still have very strong coal production, which Europe's going to need, quite frankly, because unfortunately they've made a series of decisions that, you know, I don't agree with, but I don't see a way for them to do much about it at this point. So that is what it is. Now, as relates to military, and I'm going to try to dance the line on this one because this isn't really the area for which I love talking about things. But of course, everybody has strong feelings about Taiwan. I just want to show you a few things before everybody gets all excited about Taiwan. First of all, these are the largest standing armies. And I think sometimes people will quote this China standing army as 4 million and be like, boy, China's got a large standing army. You know what else China has? A lot of borders. 14 countries border China, not the least of which is India, which actually has a larger standing army, by the way. Russia, well, they're a little busy right at the minute, but has, you know, they come in right underneath. Vietnam, 3rd largest, North and South Korea. So that's why they have a fairly significant size army. So that's the first thing I would just let you know. Okay, the second thing that I just want to also emphasize is their military spending budget. Now, do I think this is high? Do I think this is low? I really don't have a lot of comments on that particular question because that is not necessary, other than to just show you what the budget of China is versus the United States. Now, do they have lower labor costs? Probably, but you know, that kind of is what it is. And then the last thing I'll show you as relates to military might, if you will, is this, and that is the number of combat aircraft. I just pulled this off of Wikipedia, you guys. I'm not too clever, okay? This is the combat aircraft by country off of Wikipedia. But this has always been approximately these numbers. I've been looking at them for different reasons over the course of decades. Well, I tell you how different these numbers were in 2000, the first time, 1998, the first time I looked at them. But anyways, nonetheless, this is what it looks like, okay? We're a very strong country when it comes to military. So as a result, it doesn't strike me as odd, or it's not abnormal to me that we would always go there first as a way of doing pretty much anything on the international front. That's just not how necessarily China rolls, okay? There are acts of military conflict and different things that have happened, but traditionally, the way that China has tried to navigate certain things to the extent that it's possible is through diplomacy. And also, let's just call it what it is, economic trade. Okay, what's the last thing? Oh yeah, this actually is just to accentuate the economic situation that they've got, such that we might try to choose something other than to just go to war. You know, tons, you know, they're starting to feel export volume weakness. You know, tons on a year over year decreased 0.1%. Throughput was up 4.1%. All that means is you had less tonnage. And as a result, it was easier and faster to bring the cargo ships through, unload them, et cetera. And it's a range of which port was weak and which port was not weak. But in fairness, this is not so dramatic a number that we would be like, oh my gosh, the wheels are coming off at all, right? This 0.1. Now that said, there's going to be a bunch of people that said, you can never trust numbers that come out of China. And I get it. All right, look, I'm not going to make more comment than just this, okay? So, and we know that from August, September, October, there was a significant decline in cargo ships coming out of the Asia region. FedEx told that to us when they reported earnings. Go look at my FedEx episode if you need to hear more details on that. So that's kind of what's going on. But the last thing I really want to show you that would make it a little bit lower probability. Like some people are putting probabilities on this very, very high. And my probability is a lot lower because of this one thing that is also happening. let me show you the imports and exports of Taiwan. Okay. You see this here? This is 27 plus 13, right? That's about 40%, a little bit over 40% of all exports. Yeah, this is exports, end up in China or Hong Kong. That's how tied these nations are together. But now here's the more important thing. You see this block over here? That's integrated circuits, okay? 37% of Taiwan's exports are circuits. And guess where they go to? Okay, so here's the thing that might be, let's say, if you were going to play this out, what might be the more clever way to play it out? We have this going on in our build. This is all the fabs that are going to be built in the United States that have been announced thus far as a function of the CHIPS Act. And we've got Intel saying they should be really starting to be up and running end of this year, but early next year. I know people have told me early to mid next year. We'll know when Intel, which has broken my heart time and time again, quarter after quarter, reports their earnings, what actually will happen. And that'll be, that's interesting. They also have a fab in it. They also have some things going on in Arizona as well. But these are CHIPS Act related builds. I shouldn't put fabs there because it's there's actually a couple of different facilities as well. I'm not sure 100%. Anyways, nonetheless, we're building a lot of semiconductor capacity here, and that includes Taiwan Semis coming over here, as well as Globotech. So my suspicion is that if we have someone with a little bit, I mean, you never know, because this is really one guy making a call, right? But it would seem to me that it might be a little bit smarter for him to just hold out until 1 or 2 years. And then the argument for the United States, you know what I mean? It just changes things a little bit. Now, some people are going to say there's more geopolitical, what have you, but as much as, you know, we don't really have a claim on Taiwan. The United States doesn't. Other countries might, or other situations, but we don't have a claim on it. So, you know, I don't really know another way to, anyways, let's just go ahead and pause because I don't want to get too political on this, but I will take the questions that I'm okay to answer. We've got Taiwan Semi reporting, by the way, on Thursday.
Yeah, thank you. China is very interesting. My question is the overbuild of real estate? I mean, that doesn't seem like their style.
How do you mean?
Well, they overbuilt these I guess condo projects, whatever, cities, whatever.
Grande?
The builders got way overextended.
Yeah. You know, on that specific company, I think there's a lot of little things that are a little bit funky on that one, right? First, there's the structure that so we separate the debt on the building from the debt on the land, so that it's easier from a bankruptcy perspective to then break everything apart and let it go a certain way.
Okay.
So yeah.
You can't lien the land. Okay. The land is owned by the government?
No, the loan actually, it's usually a lease back is the way I think they do it. Now, I'm not an expert on Chinese real estate investment. So please, if I'm wrong on this, I apologize, but I believe it's more like the structure for us, the way that we would look at it is it looks more like a lease back over a course of like maybe a century or something like that. It's like a land.
99-year lease. Okay.
Yeah. But nonetheless, I think the loans go together. And that's part of the reason that the structure has been such a pain to unwind. Were they over levered? Yeah. I mean, that's an unambiguous situation there. Is it easy to unwind? No. Did they necessarily over underbuild? Hard to say. They got 1 billion people. You know what I mean? So, and they're trying to move away from one child policy. So I don't know if overbuilt is the right word. I mean, in fairness, we in the United States, people might say we're overbuilt, but we're so severely underbuilt on house relative to population growth.
Right.
You know, so at a point in given time, relative to who can afford it, you know, what they didn't anticipate was the same thing we didn't anticipate, which was a massive COVID shutdown that would last for an extensive period of time. That you would close all the borders and not allow anyone even internationally to come in and want that property. They didn't anticipate that. Where
do the developers borrow the money?
That's a really good question. I think most of it is, you know what? I don't want to answer out of turn. I know that some of it is just direct from investment, but some of it may actually be from a direct investment from a Chinese entity that is, state owned or something. I don't know much about Chinese investment. I only know about this politics.
Well, the point I'm trying to get is, if it's government, I don't see them getting in that over levered, so to speak.
Well, yeah, that's a weird thing, is that the leverage works a little differently when you are able to print money a certain way. You know what I mean? Because the real thing with leverage, the real thing for them is, I'm trying to figure out how to answer this in a way that's really clear. It's really the time component of debt that gets you every time. Do you know what I mean?
Time component of debt. Oh, okay. You mean, yeah. So a short-term loan would hurt them.
Yeah, which happens in construction as a construction loan.
Right.
So that's why I keep saying the issue is timing more than anything. With debt, you can always stretch that out for a while, grow GDP, and try to get people running past it. Because if you have a little bit of inflation that inflates the asset, plus you're able to stretch out the term of the debt, then you can disappear these really big issues over a course of a period of time.
Okay, got it.
Like, I mean, I'm trying to think that the best comp would be not 2008, where the exact opposite happened, but possibly like 2004, 2005, when people would buy houses putting nothing down and then just wait for the house to appreciate and flip it.
Right. Yeah.
That's what all of Evergrande looked like, essentially.
That's what Evergrande was doing.
I mean, that's what it looked like to me. Now, I'm not an expert in that, though, so I really shouldn't say anything I shouldn't get too excited. That's what it looked like to me. And so they got hurt initially because the price of all their raw materials came a little bit up faster than they anticipated. And also their ability to get those, get the materials in time to build it out. Also, that timing mismatch really crushed them on those initial construction loans. And then as soon as they found out about that, as soon as the market found out about that, people stopped buying up homes. So they had very low amount, here in New York, when you build a high rise, you need to pre-sell X amount. And if someone thinks that you're not going to finish the building, suddenly your pre-sales go to zero very quickly. That's my understanding of how it started. Now, how it's subsequently been unwound, or I haven't really kept up with it as much because, Chinese markets aren't so much my thing.
Got it. Okay. We have CPI.
These real estate situations aren't hard. Like, they seem really crippling because the US market behaves a certain way. And but because China's GDP growth over the course of decades has been so substantially different than ours, meaning they have a history of having 8 to 12, even more percent GDP growth after a slow GDP growth year. It's harder to draw. It's harder to some of the things don't quite relate. I mean, it is true that certain properties, my ring light fell. Certain properties in the United States took almost 15, 16 years post 2008, but we didn't have GDP growth at high single digits, low double digits like China did. So there's that, you know what I mean? So it's hard to always draw parallels to the US market with China.
Yeah, right.
That's part of the reason I don't do China. I know what I don't know as relates to that stuff.
Well, you've kept us out of it for over a year, so.
Yeah. I mean, Baba is such a...
It wasn't good from an investment standpoint.
Yeah. Look, if it snaps, so the one thing I would mention, in case it wasn't clear, UBS is making a bet. I'm actually technically making the same bet. which is that Xi Jinping will come into office and he'll want the economic growth faucet to be turned back on. And as a function of that, he will alleviate and find a resolution to COVID lockdown quickly, and then figure out ways to make peace across the globe. Kumbaya, option one.
Kumbaya.
That's what UBS the CEO and I have a position on. I'm doing it through Baba. He's doing it because that's where his company's laid out, so to speak, as well as assets and client base, whatever. We're not the only ones that are making that bet. Do I think that is, like, if I had to put odds, right, every day I change my thought process on the odds of it, to be fair, because it is just that weird of an environment.
So you're buying Baba?
I have it as a butterfly.
Oh,
so it didn't cost very much.
That's right.
The way that I structured it. And it pays out if Baba moves over back up into the $100 range. Pays out like 10 to 1 or something.
Yeah, I remember that. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much.
It wasn't very expensive. I was like, all right, fine. I'll put on this one and just see what happens. Yeah. I mean, it would be really nice if after, so the meeting will take place on the 16th, and then there'll be tons of news flow that comes out of it. And then it will be disseminated what choice and what objectives the CCP has coming out of it. Hopefully it doesn't get increasingly problematic globally, but we'll know within about 2 to 3 weeks here.
Good deal. Okay, great show.
Great. See you guys tomorrow. Bye.